bridge.
It's a shame you're not going to be looking because that is a cracking view of the skyline.
That's really cool. That's great. I'm very much getting used to driving this van.
Hey team, and welcome back to the channel.
After 5 nights exploring Auckland, the time had come to pick up another camper van and hit the road.
One of the things that we wanted to achieve whilst in New Zealand was to drive from the very top of the North Island to the very bottom of the South Island. We therefore drove north out of Auckland, an area known to the Kiwis as Northland, en route to Cape Reinga, the northernmost tip of this stunning country.
We had 80 nights with our van to see as much of New Zealand as possible. Unfortunately, we would soon discover that the La Nina weather phenomenon, which drenched us for a good stretch of our time in Australia, also impacts New Zealand. Our first day with the van was thankfully dry. As you're about to see, things started to go wrong on the weather front pretty quickly after that. Welcome to campground number 1 in New Zealand. It has been a really stunning drive here. Cheers from our new van and my first beer in our new van.
We spent the evening settling into our new home before turning in for the night.
Good morning. Firstly, from this spectacular view.
It was a short drive to stop number 1 in the little town of Matakohe.
Okay, stop number 1, the Kauri Museum. Once upon a time, this whole area was covered in incredible, enormous forests with trees like that. This museum is all about how they cleared the land for farming and how they processed with some of the earliest machinery. This was used for cutting giant trunks like that in half. It was steam powered. The Kauri Museum looks small from the front, but trust us, it's much bigger than it looks. Logging and forestry forms a huge part of the story of New Zealand's economy, and the museum does a great job of bringing this integral part of New Zealand's history to life. I've never seen anything quite like this before. So this is a steam engine. The steam engine drives that turbine. That turbine runs down to there, and then that in turn drives the circular saw running in the distance, and through that circular saw goes a log to halve it. But the size of the machinery required to do this stuff is insane. This is really amazing. This is a cross section of a tree. You can see how it's been sliced up, but it is a single piece of one of the original Kauri trees. This one wasn't supposed to be cut down. You can see in the photograph there it was preserved, but then unfortunately got killed by lightning. So they contracted someone to chop it down and slice it up, and they gave a cross section of it to the museum. So you can see just how enormous these things are. Amazing. This is an example of a log from a Kauri tree. This one is estimated to weigh 14 tons. This is how they used to get gum out of the trees, which they would then sell as well, literally sitting on a little swing and hacking away at it with a saw. The colour of this.
Brisbane, don't be shit.
That was unexpectedly a very, very good museum, I thought. We are on our first forest walk of New Zealand, very exciting. This is only really a short one. To see a 2,000-year-old really big tree. And here we have what I'm pretty sure is the tree from Avatar. Look at the size of it.
Lord of the Forest.
It is the Lord of the Forest. Trunk girth 13.8 metres, trunk height 17 metres, total height 51.7 metres. Wow.
Okay, it's funny, it says the feeding roots are shallow and delicate, so you can't walk on it, but look at that thing.
It doesn't look delicate, does it?
Don't look delicate.
Wowee. That's many, many times over the biggest tree I've ever seen. I didn't know trees grew that wide. Wow. 2,000 years old. Look at that. That's amazing. I don't know if you get a better sense of perspective from here. You probably have to see it in real life. We're just a bit further back. But you can see how small the people are compared to the tree. I didn't know trees grew that wide. It's amazing. We drove on north for a couple of hours to our stop for the night at a place called Okapako Lodge. Look at that view. Stunning. And that's Jack the dog, who's a very big boy, but good boy. Look at that. Rain's just stopped for a moment. I think it's going to be raining on and off all night. There's mountains behind the clouds over there, but you can't see them at the moment, a bit buried. How about that as a place to park up for the night, with that view out the back? Fantastic.
We spent the evening hiding from the rain in the camp kitchen, and after Josh fixed the blinds in our new van with masking tape, we settled down for the night.
Van life top tip. You can fix almost anything with masking tape. Good morning. We just had night 2 in the van, which, as you can probably see, was a slightly rainy one, but not actually too bad a night's sleep.
Our goal on day 3 in the van was Cape Reinga, the northernmost tip of New Zealand.
The forests are back. They're vast. Every 20 minutes or so a log truck comes by with another 20 or so giant logs strapped in at the back. It feels quite remote and quite wild out here. It's quite cool. That there in the distance is the lighthouse that marks the northernmost tip of New Zealand. It's whippy, windy, rainy, a bit blustery. Lauren looks like she's dressed as a flasher, but she is wearing clothes under there, I promise. But we're doing this for you guys. The sun's actually thinking about making an appearance, so we'll see.
As you can see, it was a little blustery at Cape Reinga, interspersed with massive downpours. We made the most of it, but apologies in advance for where it's hard to hear us speaking over the noise from the wind.
So we are standing at the Cape Reinga lighthouse, which I'm currently using for a bit of shade from the wind. But there it is. It's not very big. But this is the most northern tip of New Zealand. This is as far north as you can go on the mainland.
The sea and the Pacific Ocean meet.
Yeah.
You can see some of the waves.
You can literally see the waves coming in different directions, crashing into each other. I may have to add this in editing in post, but this is the spot where Maori people believe that departed souls leave this island and go back to their spiritual homeland, which is in a place near the Philippines, where, as I understand it, Maori people first came to New Zealand from many thousands of years ago. There's just one surviving tree perched on the cliffs there, which is of significance to the locals. It shouldn't be there, given that it's growing out of a rock side in, as you can see, fairly stormy conditions, but it survives. Yeah.
The wind was epic, the waves were crazy, and sand was flying everywhere. And after a few minutes, we'd had enough. But seeing as we had the northernmost tip of New Zealand to ourselves, we did this first.
I am the most northerly person in New Zealand.
I'm standing at the most northern tip of New Zealand. I am currently the most northern human on the New Zealand mainland. How cool is that?
Hi.
We survived a slightly blowy walk. We are in our campsite for the night. We have set up half the bed.
This is our nook.
This is what we call the nook. So we've turned the back into the bed, put some cushions down. We have wine. We have nuts, chocolate raisins, popcorn, and we are about to crash out with a movie. But from us, good night.
Good night. The next morning, we started heading back south. New Zealand is famous for having a series of epic sand dunes a short drive from Cape Reinga, and we hope to go sandboarding down them.
I'm not sure it's sandboarding weather, or even looking at sand dunes weather, it must be said.
We pulled over for a quick look and moved swiftly on. Millennials here are super excited to see so many avocado bushes. Ready for my toast.
Okay, we have gone back down the northern tip of the peninsula, and we're now heading east along the eastern side of this northern peninsula. We came up on the western side, and just the other side of that is the ocean. One good thing about the fact that it hasn't stopped raining for the last 48 hours is that Rainbow Falls is crashing. That's brilliant.
Our next brief stop was a tiny place called Kauri.
This doesn't look like very much, but it is a building called the Stone Store, which is the oldest store in New Zealand. It's from 1832.
Wow.
This is the oldest house in New Zealand. 1828, I think, but I think they're done with tours for the day. We don't want to hang around here because it's pouring. Lauren's found a nice spot. What do we think of... I don't know. What do we think?
Of New Zealand? It's very wet.
It's a bit drippy.
The next morning, we made our way to the Waitangi Museum and Treaty Grounds. Waitangi is one of the most important places in the history of New Zealand, being the place at which the Treaty of Waitangi, one of New Zealand's most important legal documents, was signed. The museum is superb, setting out the history of New Zealand and the series of events which led to the treaty itself. After walking around the museum, we joined an excellent tour around the grounds. Here is my best effort at summarising what we learned for you all, and apologies in advance for a few inevitable errors. It was a lot to learn at once.
Okay, we are standing in Waitangi. We are standing on the place where the Treaty of Waitangi was signed in 1842. It was signed between the British Crown and the Maori people. On behalf of the Crown, the gentleman who lived in that house, James Busby, the first official British resident of New Zealand, and I think in the first instance he said 70 northern Maori chiefs signed, 200 copies were then sent all around the country, and a further 430 signatures came back. So 500 Maori chiefs signed the Treaty of Waitangi, which in their understanding was intended to bring the protection of the British Empire as it was to New Zealand in circumstances where New Zealand had been properly discovered, as it were. It was commonly known around the world, and there were many superpowers that were interested in New Zealand. New Zealand was sort of booming as a destination for trade, but it didn't have any sort of formal status as a country. It wasn't until a few years earlier, I think 1839, he said, that there was a Declaration of Independence here that was endorsed by the Crown, and a national flag was created. The gentleman who was our tour guide told us about quite a funny story of a New Zealand ship turning up in Australia, the ship being impounded and everyone being arrested because they were flying without an official flag, and they were therefore pirates. But this is the place where that treaty was signed, and regrettably, but perhaps not unsurprisingly, the treaty in Maori, as signed by the Maori leaders, read somewhat differently to the English version. They believed that they were retaining full control over their lands. What the English version said was that full sovereignty was being ceded to the crown. And a series of wars started, and ultimately ended some years later, after one too many bloody conflicts. But it sounds like they're still trying to resolve the historical position about ownership of this land and how it's split between the British Crown and the Maori people. Interestingly, over in the distance there is a little town called Russell. Russell was once upon a time the capital of New Zealand. So James Busby's house was situated here so that he would be looking over the water at the Crown, at Russell, at the capital.
To commemorate the 100th anniversary of the treaty, a beautiful traditional meeting house representing all the tribes of New Zealand was built at Waitangi. The house is now used to offer a Maori cultural experience. A group of us approached the house, pausing as a warning call came from the tribe who, for the purposes of the experience, live there. They began by sending out a warrior of great skill, whose job was to assess our intentions. After demonstrating his skill with a traditional staff weapon, he placed a living branch on the ground. If we came in peace, our nominated chief was to show this by picking up the offering. Once the warrior was satisfied, he went back to the house, and one of the tribe's female leaders invited us to approach with a beautiful song. Unfortunately, we were not allowed to take videos inside the house, and we were too busy enjoying ourselves to think about taking videos in any event. All we can say is that this is a wonderful and enriching experience, showcasing Maori music, dance, weaponry and more. If you get the chance, we highly recommend you visit.
So these are some of the copies of the Treaty of Waitangi that made their way around the country and were signed by various people. Unsurprisingly, very faded and worn. The treaty was signed on the 6th of February 1840. I think I said it was 1842 earlier. 1840.
We finished up at the museum and moved on. We are on our way to Russell. It's like a 5 or 10 minute boat crossing and then like a 10-minute drive, not even.
We are walking along the waterfront in Russell. It was also in, I think, there you go, 1847, the centre of one of the big uprisings from northern Maori tribes. The New Zealand flag kept getting taken down by the British and replaced with a British flag because the British viewed New Zealand as a colony, and that was not what the Maori had understood the situation was going to be following the Treaty of Waitangi. So a Maori chief kept stealing the British flag and replacing it with a New Zealand flag, and eventually that escalated into all-out armed conflict, until eventually there was a huge showdown here and as the British fled on a ship out into the water this way, they turned around and bombarded the city with cannons. The armories caught and the whole place went up, which is kind of grim, really. Good morning. We are walking down the waterfront in Russell, and we are going for a tour of the Bay of Islands. Should be a good day.
To the northeast of Russell is the Bay of Islands, a beautiful collection of 140 subtropical islands which have generally been left untouched. They are wonderful to sail through, and we even saw a couple of dolphins on the way.
That is a hole going right through the middle of this island. A hole in the rock. Imaginatively named. We are on Urupukapuka Island in the Bay of Islands. I think there are 144 islands in the bay according to our boat driver. I think this is one of 5 with any people on it. The only one where there's a restaurant. And it's beautiful.
The next day, we made our way south to the town of Waipu, where I learned shortly before leaving for this trip, I have family. My cousin Alan took us to see the town, the nearby waterfall and Waipu beach, after which we settled back in at his house and hid from the rain, which was well and truly back. The next day was a total write-off thanks to the weather, but on our last day in Waipu, the sun finally came out. We made the most of it with a brilliant coastal cliff-top walk.
Look at this. We're on a coastal walking track. And that is a view. Look at this, you've got these local trees, I can't remember the name, but they flower bright red at Christmas time, so they're called New Zealand's Christmas trees, sitting all the way down the coast, leading to one of the nicest little secluded beaches I've ever seen. And then this view, brilliant, so wonderful. We are on our way back on ourselves. It's about 3 or 4 more hours. A gentleman we just spoke to said until the tide is out far enough that you can walk back along the beach. So we are going to enjoy these views. We could have gone a little bit further, but we'd have had to go an awfully long way down some very, very steep stairs and then all the way back up. So we decided to take the lazy option, which we are both okay with. Help! Lauren will do well to finish that. We are getting our feet in the ocean in New Zealand. Look at this beach, Waipu Beach. According to my cousin, the population of Waipu is 2,000 normally. Here we go. Whee! Ooh, that's cold. It goes up to 8,000 in the summer. There's people coming here for the summer break. It's gorgeous. Look at the sunset. It's lovely. What a wonderful, nice place.
We have just had a really, really lovely day today. The weather has finally been on our side for the first time in the road trip. The mood is good. It's a good mood today.
And we are out for a little evening walk on Waipu Beach, which we like because saying Waipu is fun. But from the Doms down under, even further down under.
Good night. Next time on the Doms Down Under, we head down the east coast of the North Island. Oh, and the wettest summer in New Zealand in decades gets well and truly underway.
What a luxury scenic train ride. Look at the view, it's amazing. Here we go. Check out Mrs. Dom, the height of fashion.
It is absolutely hammering down. The wind is insane.
It has not stopped raining for about 35 hours and it's been quite heavy.
Which means
all of the main roads around here have actually been taken out. The official advice is not to travel today. So this is Mount Maunganui. I did just see someone walking up there, but I'm not sure today's the day for it. So let's see how things look tomorrow. This is our campsite for the night. Ocean just there. Thankfully we didn't pay for an ocean view because you can't see anything. It was a beautiful day, so we thought we'd come for a lovely walk.
Even though it's forecasted to rain this afternoon.
Minor showers. Anyway, we're caught in a minor shower. The good news is we've got a brolly.
We are at Mission Winery, which is the oldest winery in New Zealand, and we're here for a little day-night dinner.
Thank you so much for watching. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time.